Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is another edition of World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of others. I'm Shivan Chandra.
And I'm Hem Khorsara. And on the show today, House representatives have voted to formalize the ongoing impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. Biden has slammed the House vote, calling it a baseless political stunt. We'll bring you all the details on the show today.
Also on the show, despite waning support and growing international pressure for a ceasefire, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Israel's forces would continue until Hamas is annihilated. Exactly what is the end game here? We will discuss that on the show as well.
Also on the show, we will be joined by our correspondent Susan Tehrani, who will be joining us from New York. Later on the show, we'll also have with us Alison LaGrange, who will be getting us all the updates from the world of showbiz.
All that and a lot more right here on World DNA. The next 60 minutes, let's get you started with the headlines first.
The Republican-controlled U.S. House of Representatives voted on Wednesday to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden based on his son's controversial international dealings.
Israel says it intends to press ahead with the Gaza war against Hamas, despite coming under increasing international pressure, including from key ally, the United States.
Yemen's Houthi rebels fired 2 missiles at a commercial tanker carrying Indian-manufactured jet fuel near the Bab al-Mandeb Strait. The vessel was also attacked by a speedboat with armed men off the coast of Yemen's Red Sea port.
India rejects statement of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the OIC, on the Supreme Court's judgment upholding the 2019 revocation of Article 370 of the Constitution. Calls the OIC remark ill-informed and ill-intended.
Newcastle United's return to Champions League after more than 20 years ends in a heartbreak. The Magpies crash out of Europe following a 1-2 loss against AC Milan. Now, the Republican-controlled U.S. House of Representatives has voted formally to authorize the ongoing impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden.
Well, they've called for an inquiry. Now, the U.S. president questioned the priorities of House Republicans and called it a baseless Republican impeachment stunt.
Now, the House voted on partisan lines 221 to 213 to launch the inquiry. Republicans are rallying behind the politically charged process, despite lingering concerns among some in the party that the investigation is yet to produce evidence of misconduct by the president.
House Republicans are examining whether Biden improperly benefited from his 53-year-old son Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings when he served as vice president of the United States from 2009 to 2017 under Barack Obama. Now, the Republicans have zeroed in on his son's business ventures in Ukraine and China during that period. They have turned up evidence that the Hunter Biden led clients to believe that he could provide access to the vice president's office.
But they've not provided evidence that Biden took any official actions to help those businesses or benefited financially from them. The effort will almost certainly fail to remove Biden from office.
Even if the House votes to impeach the president, the Senate would then have to vote to convict him on the charges by a two-thirds vote, which is a near impossibility in a chamber where Biden's fellow Democrats hold a 51 to 49 majority.
Speaker, for what purpose this gentleman from Massachusetts?
Now, of course, this comes as a big development, and what will be the implications of this, especially at a time when the United States is gearing up for the 2024 polls? Our correspondent Susan Tehrani explains.
Earlier in the day, the president's son, Hunter Biden, was subpoenaed for a closed-door deposition. He arrived on Capitol Hill, spoke to reporters, and left. He did not enter the building to sit down for that closed-door deposition defying the subpoena. Just hours later, the House voted on party lines to authorize an impeachment inquiry into President Biden. And while it's very unlikely that the Senate will pass it, considering the fact that it is a Democrat majority Senate right now, still Republicans hope that this impeachment inquiry will bolster their argument for Hunter's subpoena. Republicans are now moving to hold the president's son in contempt of Congress for not showing up for that testimony. In a statement ahead of the vote, lawmakers said that this impeachment inquiry against President Biden will help them in court to get the proper documents. Today's obstruction by Hunter Biden reinforces the need for a formal vote. That's what they said before that vote. So while Democrats argue that Hunter Biden's legal problems have nothing to do with President Biden himself, and it's not Hunter that's running for the 2024 presidential election, Republicans argue that with this impeachment inquiry and the subpoena for Hunter Biden, they'll get enough information to figure out whether or not Biden, as vice president, was indeed involved in obstruction and his son's business dealings. Susan Tahrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
All right. We are also now joined by Mark Merowitz, who is a professor at State University of New York Maritime College. Mark has been with us several times in the past as well. Thanks for joining in, Mark.
Pleasure.
Mark, let's just start right off with this. Now, the House has voted to formalize an impeachment inquiry. An inquiry is not the same as voting for an impeachment. What are the chances that this advances to be an impeachment against Biden?
I mean, you have to understand that the impeachment itself is the House vote by a majority, and the Republicans have a majority. The hurdle that you described is the fact that in the Senate, in order to convict, where no president has ever been convicted, we've had a couple of impeachments, President Clinton, President Trump impeached twice, President Andrew Johnson, the successor to Lincoln, was impeached, but no president's ever been convicted in the Senate by the two-thirds vote that you described. The impeachment inquiry really functions to allow the House Republicans to issue subpoenas like the one that they issued to Hunter Biden. The fact that Hunter Biden appeared on Capitol Hill and then left and did not appear in Congress is a very egregious and serious matter. And others who have done so have been found to be in contempt of Congress, which is a crime. And this is very problematic. So I think that what's really happening here in American politics is we're seeing Trump's cases and indictments and court cases, and we have Biden's impeachment inquiry. We got Hunter Biden investigations, and stymieing the Congress, working down at Capitol Hill, and then leaving. In effect, wagging his finger at the Congress, which is something you can't really do. But that is the low state of American politics at the present time.
Now, Mr. Merowitz, the Republican-led committees are yet to produce any proof. Biden, in his statement, said that they're attacking him, and this is a baseless impeachment, a political stunt, in fact. Now, how do you see this playing out, and will we see more such incidents leading up to the 2024 presidential elections?
Oh, yes, absolutely. This is what we're going to see. We're going to see the impeachment inquiry. Now, arguably, the Republicans say that they need to have the inquiry in order to have the right to get further information. Now, the president takes a position that's baseless. It may, in fact, be baseless. But the fact is that we're in a political system here in the United States, and both parties are in a very, very strong conflict against each other, and they're fighting it out. Trump and then Trump's family, being subpoenaed to hearings, and Biden's family being subpoenaed. So it's really getting very deep and personal. Now, as far as Hunter Biden, the question whether or not the president was a vice president at that point was, access to the vice president was part of what Hunter Biden was doing, where he put his father on the phone with business partners, and there are all kinds of allegations. Again, I think the American people are entitled to know in all of these, what is this all about? But I think that the inquiry is a first step. And here's a point, I think, to reiterate it again. Even if President Biden is impeached by a majority, which could happen, the likelihood of a conviction is virtually non-existent, unless you end up with something like so egregious that you end up with like a Watergate type situation where Nixon was not impeached. He resigned before he was impeached. That's because he would have been impeached and convicted. But it's really questionable, as you point out at the present time, based on what we know, that we're going to go in that direction.
Mr. Merowitz, I just want to come in here.
Politics is very fraught.
Yeah, when the chances of the impeachment are non-existent or near impossible, what's the purpose of bringing out this kind of an inquiry? What kind of effect can it have on Biden's 2024 presidential run?
It's profound because it affects voters' perception of Biden and of Trump. Look, Trump's indicted, he's going to court. Biden is being impeached, they're going to have hearings, and they're going to try to bring out things against him. So what is this really all about is using the institutions of government, whether they be the courts or whether they be the Congress or the Senate, in order to advance electoral chances for candidates. So this is really what it's about. Because at the end of the day, those indictments, we actually don't know where that goes right now, because as you know, Jack Smith has asked the Supreme Court to accelerate those proceedings so that they can go forward before the election. The Supreme Court might not agree with that. We have an election. So do we want to have the president, Trump, going to court and facing conviction and possibly jail sentences? And the same point, the turmoil of having impeachment trial. Now that's very disruptive, and doing that in an election year. So what the American people are facing is a confusing mixture of all kinds of accusations. And what is the point of it? And this was your question, is basically to affect the voters' perception of the candidates.
Perception.
Because probably Trump will be running against Biden.
It will definitely have some kind of an effect on the perception, and that is what matters most leading up to the 2024 presidential run. Thank you so much for joining in, Mark. That was Mark Merowitz, a professor at State University of New York Maritime College. Always a pleasure to have you here with us on World DNA.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has reiterated that nothing will stop Israel from continuing the war in Gaza until it defeats Hamas.
Well, at this point, even the US has started voicing concerns, but I guess nothing really changes as far as Israel's stance is concerned. Amid mounting pressure, Israel's Foreign Minister Eli Cohen says that the war will continue with or without international support.
אני רואה שם את ההתחלה של ההבנה שאנחנו נחושים להמשיך עד הסוף ולחסל את הגוף הזה.
Israel's strongest ally, the United States, has expressed concern over civilian casualties in Gaza. As per reports, it has delayed the sale of 20,000 assault rifles to Israel over settler violence in the West Bank. U.S. National Security Advisor is going to visit Israel for a 2-day visit starting Thursday. He is also likely to make other stops in the West Asia region. Talks on hostages and humanitarian aid will be the focus of this visit.
Meanwhile, Israel has announced that it has suffered its worst combat losses so far in the war. Israel reported 10 of its soldiers killed in the past 24 hours itself, including a colonel commanding a forward base and a lieutenant colonel commanding a regiment.
86 חללים, 86 קברים חדשים נוספו בהר הרצל בלבד מאז מתקפת הרצח של ה-7 באוקטובר. מחיר כבד, כבד מאוד. אבל המטרה שלשמה נפלו היא מטרה ראויה. אין ראויה ממנה ואין צודקת ממנה.
Hamas, on the other hand, says that any plan for post-war Gaza that does not involve the Palestinian militant group is just a delusion. This is Netanyahu said that he will not allow the entry into Gaza of those who support terrorism and finance terrorism.
إن أي رهان على ترتيبات في غزة أو في القضية الفلسطينية عامة دون حماس وفصائل المقاومة هي وهم وسراب. هي وهم وسراب. هي وهم وسراب.
The Israeli army released footage showing troops fighting in the southern part of Gaza. Israel has intensified its attacks in the region after the fighting renewed following a brief pause.
Hamas has also released a video showing its operations in Khan Yunis city in southern Gaza.
These are the scenes of Rafah in south. In the aftermath of Israeli strikes, people could be seen being rushed to hospitals in ambulances.
Meanwhile, violence is also raging in the West Bank. An Israeli raid in the area entered its second day on Wednesday, and it left at least 7 Palestinians dead, as per the Palestinian Health Ministry. The Israeli military said forces confiscated approximately 30 weapons, ammunition, military equipment and weapon parts, without commenting on those killed.
Yemen's Houthi rebels have carried out another attack in the Red Sea.
A commercial tanker shipped from India narrowly escaped the 2 missiles launched by the group on Wednesday, and this comes just a day after the Iran-backed group claimed attacking a Norwegian commercial tanker as well.
Well, the attacks seem to be increasing in frequency. Reports now citing that US officials have said that the commercial tanker was carrying Indian-manufactured jet fuel near the Bab al-Mandeb Strait. Officials say an American warship also shot down a suspected Houthi drone flying in its direction during the incident. And no one was hurt in the attack. Now, the tanker owned by Ardmore Shipping Corporation was traveling north towards the Suez Canal in the Red Sea and had left from the Indian city of Mangalore. The company has also acknowledged the attack, and this marks the first time that the Houthis have targeted energy shipment heading towards the Suez Canal.
Now, the latest attack comes amid a raging campaign by the Houthi rebels to target Israel-linked ships in the 29-kilometer-wide strait. They attacked the Norwegian tanker, the Strinda, a day before Houthis claimed the ship was delivering crude oil to an Israeli terminal. But the tanker's owner said that the vessel was headed to Italy with a cargo of biofuel feedstock.
In November, the Houthis seized a vehicle transport ship linked to Israel in the Red Sea of Yemen. Israel's military has, in response, deployed one of its most advanced warships now, a SAR 6 class corvette, in the Red Sea to deal with the Houthi threat.
Now, EU leaders head into a high-stakes summit for Ukraine with a macroeconomic package of $54 billion and a promise of formal membership.
Well, that's something Ukraine has been looking for since a while. Talks are on the table. Hungary's Prime Minister, Orban, has threatened to veto both the steps, which would condemn the meet to failure and leave Kiev out in the cold almost 2 years after Russia launched an invasion.
Ukraine's neighbor, Moldova, also is hoping for membership talks. The summit comes at a crucial time in Ukraine's war against Russia, after a counter-offensive failed to make major gains here.
Well, the Biden administration so far is unable to get a $60 billion aid package for Kiev through US Congress. If EU leaders give a green light to membership talks and the 4-year financial package, Kiev will be able to claim a geopolitical victory here. Failure to agree would likely be greeted by Moscow as a sign of faltering Western support for Ukraine. All of the EU's 27 national leaders, except Orban, have backed the start of accession talks. But such a decision requires unanimity, and the Hungarian And the Hungarian Prime Minister, who cultivates close ties to Moscow, has insisted that Ukraine is not ready for such a step.
The Ukrainian president said his country had carried out the necessary political reforms to get the go-ahead and urged the EU to honor its commitments. Volodymyr Zelensky stated Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán had no reason to block Ukraine's EU membership.
He has no any reasons to block Ukrainian membership in EU. And I asked him to tell me one reason, not 3, 5, 10. Tell me one reason. I'm waiting for answer.
The Hungarian leader cited corruption in Ukraine and other concerns in justifying his stance. EU officials and diplomats suspect he is using the issue as a bargaining chip, hoping to obtain funds frozen by the bloc over concerns about the rule of law in Hungary. On Wednesday, the European Commission, the EU executive body, restored Hungary's access to up to $11 billion in refunds for economic projects.
Now, the Commission recommended last month that EU leaders agree to start accession talks with Ukraine. A second unanimous decision would still be needed, possibly in March, to agree to a framework. Officials and diplomats said a compromise could involve a longer gap between the two decisions and the language in summit declaration on terms to be fulfilled in the meantime. Officials also said that they were braced for a tough summit that could go late into Friday night or even into the weekend.
Orbán has objected to a proposal to give Ukraine $54 billion in grants and loans to keep the state running as part of a broader revision of the EU budget. Such a revision also requires unanimity among EU governments, who would have to pay for it essentially. If Hungary sticks to its stance, the EU's other members could set up financing outside the budget for Ukraine, but that would be more complex and expensive. Now, some analysts think that Hungary would ultimately agree to the package as it contains cash for other projects that Budapest would benefit from as well.
Now, the sovereign of the Vatican City has chosen his final resting place.
His preferred location is not Vatican, but Rome. Pope Francis does not want to be buried alongside his predecessors, but in a basilica in Rome. And this means he will be the first pope who will be buried outside the Vatican in over 100 years.
Now, the pontiff, who turns 87 this weekend, during an interview confessed that he wants to be buried in the Santa Maria Maggiore. The Pope also revealed his plans to visit Belgium, including his native Argentina and Polynesia in 2024.
Sí, sí.
A la Francisco.
Sencillo.
También a la Francisco.
Y como siempre le prometí a la Virgen, y ya está preparado el lugar, quiero ser enterrado en Santa María Mayor.
Ah, sí.
Sí.
Santa Maria Maggiore is one of the 4 basilicas in Rome, one with which Pope said he feels a special connection. He has visited there before becoming Pope. Since his election in 2013, Pope says he prays there frequently.
Pope also paid tribute to his predecessor, Benedict, for having had the courage to step down when his health was failing him, and added that if the need arises, he will not mind following Pope Benedict's example.
Now, most of us dread getting older. There's no doubt in that. And the idea of older people as a standalone population in terms of behavior, appearance and mindset is something that has been around forever.
But what if we tell you this can all be reversed? There are claims that a newly discovered anti-aging therapy can effectively rewind age-related changes in the body. More details in our next report. Take a look.
A team of Chinese researchers have developed an anti-aging hydrogen therapy that can now effectively rewind age-related changes in the body. In a paper published by the peer-reviewed journal Nature Communications, Chinese researchers have achieved a breakthrough to safely deliver a high concentration of hydrogen molecules to reverse aging and aging-related diseases. Using nanotechnology, the team has developed a scaffold implant that delivers hydrogen 40,000 times more efficiently than other methods. According to the paper, the implant can deliver a slow and sustained release of hydrogen for up to a week. The hydrogen then acts as an anti-inflammatory agent with the ability to scavenge the toxic radicals associated with aging. Senescence, the gradual deterioration of bodily function as we age, is among the major causes of age-related conditions and diseases. In recent years, links have been identified between cellular senescence and these conditions. Since hydrogen is the lightest and simplest of all the elements, it can have a universal anti-senescence impact on various cells and tissues, effectively helping them continue to replicate and grow. While a lot more research is needed before this technology is put to test on humans, the increased development of high-performance materials that deliver hydrogen remains crucial. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
And with that, it's time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. Of course, a World DNA will continue after the break. When we come back, and when you come back, we will be bringing you updates from around the globe as global efforts continue to bring in reforms at the UN Security Council. India is spearheading into pushing the much-needed changes. We get you all the details after the break.
And Tesla has recalled just over 2 million vehicles in the United States fitted with its autopilot advanced driver assistance systems. All the details on the other side. Do stay tuned.
As democracy strengthens across the world,
Welcome back to World DNA. Thank you so much for staying with us. So far on the show, we've gotten you the latest from the United States, which is that a vote has been formalized for the impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden, who has slammed this vote, calling it baseless and a political stunt.
Well, they've called for an inquiry. It's not a call for an impeachment yet, but of course it does create some kind of impact on perception of people because they are leading into the 2024 presidential polls in just a couple of months now. Also, we told you about the EU's leaders heading into a high-stakes summit, and it's all happening for Ukraine's accession into the European Union. But there is a hindrance there that comes in from Hungary. The Hungarian Prime Minister is not in favor of either a $54 billion package for Ukraine or its membership into the European Union. We are tracking all of that. And we also brought you a small story about how Chinese researchers are claiming to have found a cure for aging. And of course, we are tracking everything very closely. Now, let's get on with all else that's happening in the world. Let's get you started with the headlines. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of others.
India rejects statement of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation on the Supreme Court's judgment upholding the 2019 revocation of Article 370 of the Constitution, calls the OIC remark ill-informed and ill-intended.
The Republican-controlled U.S. House of Representatives voted on Wednesday to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden based on his son's controversial international dealings.
Israel says it intends to press ahead with the Gaza war against Hamas despite coming under increasing international pressure, including from key ally, the United States.
Yemen's Houthi rebels fire 2 missiles at a commercial tanker carrying Indian-manufactured jet fuel near the Bab al-Mandeb Strait. The vessel was also attacked by a speedboat with armed men off the coast of Yemen's Red Sea port.
Newcastle United's return to Champions League after more than 20 years ends in a heartbreak. The Magpies crash out of Europe following a 1-2 loss against AC Milan.
And then it comes into the 6-yard now to his left. Okafor, Chukwueze.
India has strongly rejected remarks by the Organization of Islamic Cooperation expressing concern over the Supreme Court's verdict upholding the revocation of Article 370 of the Constitution.
Now, in 2019, the Government of India, just a brief background here, the Government of India had scrapped the legal provisions that provided special status to the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir, allowing it to have its own constitution and autonomy over internal administration.
But on Tuesday recently, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation called on India to reverse 2019 Kashmir measures, dubbing them illegal and unilateral. The Indian Foreign Ministry hit back and termed the OIC's statement as ill-informed and ill-intended. Without naming any nation, a ministry spokesperson condemned actions at the behest of a serial violator of human rights and an unrepentant promoter of cross-border terror. New Delhi has consistently stressed the need for Pakistan to take credible, irreversible and verifiable action to end cross-border terrorism against India. India expects Pakistan to fulfill assurances given at the highest level in 2004 and reiterated several times that territory under its control would not be allowed to be used for terrorism. Now, the ministry spokesperson further stated that such statements only undermine the credibility of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation.
OIC, an Islamic organization, it was set up in Saudi Arabia's Jeddah in May 1971. It was established after the summit's after summits by Muslim heads of state and government in 1969 and by Muslim foreign ministers in 1970. 57 states spread over 4 continents are members of the grouping.
Now, in a landmark ruling on Monday, a constitution bench of the Indian Supreme Court unanimously put its stamp of approval on the Union government's August 2019 decision. Chief Justice D.Y. Chandrachud said Article 370 of the Constitution was a temporary provision. The judges said that Jammu and Kashmir does not hold internal sovereignty. After accession in 1947, Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir, Hari Singh, signed the instrument of accession to become a part of the world's largest democracy. Now, the judges noted the clear absence of reference to sovereignty in the Jammu and Kashmir Constitution.
Now let's also talk about the breach of security in the Indian Parliament on Tuesday, which sent shockwaves. The Delhi Police Special Cell has detained 5 of the 6 people involved in this breach.
It was shocking, to say the least, to see this happening in the new Parliament building, and the 6 people are now on the hunt of. The officials are now on the hunt for the 6th accused in the case. Now, in the latest, the Ministry of Home Affairs, on the request of the Lok Sabha Secretariat, has now formed an inquiry committee which will probe into the security breach.
The inquiry committee, headed by Central Reserve Police Force Director General, along with members from other security agencies and experts, it will probe into the lapse in the security of the Parliament and will subsequently recommend action.
A major security breach stunned the Indian Parliament, stunned India, when 2 intruders threw smoke canisters to disrupt proceedings of the lower house. Around the same time, 2 others released yellow smoke from similar canisters outside the Parliament premises, prompting the police to get into action and round up the duo.
Opposition leaders have slammed the ruling government for what they called a serious security breach in the newly inaugurated Parliament.
Suddenly, two people from the visitors' galley jumped into the house. They had canisters in their hand. These canisters were emitting yellow smoke. One was attempting to run towards the speaker's chair. He was overpowered by members, and I do not know, they were shouting some slogans which I couldn't make about. But the fact that there were 2 people who could come into the visitors' galley with canisters which could emit smoke, this smoke could have been toxic, it could have been poisonous, or it could have even been smoke bombs, we do not know. But it emitted an yellow smoke, and this is a serious breach of security, especially on 13th of December, the day in which Parliament was attacked in 2001.
जो समस्या है वो बहुत गंभीर है. ये सिर्फ लोकसभा और राज्यसभा का प्रश्न नहीं है. ये प्रश्न है कि इतने बड़े सिक्योरिटी में कैसा 2 लोग अंदर आकर वहां पर सिक्योरिटी ब्रीच करके उन्होंने पूरा जैसा कि
The security breach came on the 22nd anniversary of the terror attack on the old Parliament building, which took place in 2001 on the same date, December 13th.
Moving on now, the push for reform of the UN Security Council, it's been a recurring theme in global dialogues. We've seen this before.
Yes, considering that the UN's structure dates back to the end of the Second World War. Now, the lone reform, that is an increase in the non-permanent membership from 6 to 10 members, happened during the Cold War. At the recent UN Security Council reforms event, the Council concluded that it is in urgent need of an overhaul and reconfiguration to be more representative, more effective, more coherent and more accountable. The UN accepted that this reform process has not yielded substantive results.
Representing the Global South, India has been the strongest contender to take this initiative to bring forward its perspective and efforts into pushing the much-needed reforms at the UNSC. in the third decade of the 21st century.
Now, during the G20 presidency of India took a step towards reforms by announcing the Delhi Declaration. It encompassed the inclusion of the African Union and as a permanent member of the G20, the need to hear and recognize the concerns of the global south in the group, and the pursuit of inclusive and human-centric development.
India's permanent representative to the UN spoke on the need for changes at the recent UNSC reform event, demanding similar changes which India has brought through its G20 presidency.
All right, let's get you some updates from the world of tech next. Let's have a look at some of the major developments which have taken place recently. Tesla is recalling just over 2 million vehicles in the United States fitted with its autopilot advanced driver assistance system. The company will fix a defective system that's supposed to ensure drivers are paying attention when they use autopilot. Documents by US safety regulators reveal that the company will send out a software update to fix the problems. The recall comes after a 2-year investigation by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration into a series of crashes that took place while Tesla's partially automated driving system was in use. Now, some were deadly, but according to the agency, autopilot's method of ensuring that drivers are paying attention can be inadequate. It can lead to foreseeable misuse of the system. The recall covers Tesla Y, S, 3 and X. These are the models produced between October 5th and October of 2012 and December of this year.
Teen usage of social media hasn't dropped much, despite rising concerns about its effects on the mental health of adolescents. This is according to a survey conducted by the Pew Research Institute. According to the study, roughly 1 in 6 teens describe their use of two platforms, YouTube and TikTok, as almost constant. 71% of the teens say they visit YouTube at least daily. 16% describe their usage as constant, almost constant. A slightly larger group, which stands at 17%, says they use TikTok constantly. YouTube remains by far the most popular social media platform among teens. 93% of the respondents say that they use the service. It's important to note that social media is increasingly taking fire over the algorithmic techniques that platforms use to draw in and retain younger users.
In October, a coalition of 33 states, including New York and California, sued Meta Platforms for contributing to the youth mental health crisis. The company has been accused of knowingly and deliberately designing features on Instagram and Facebook that make children addicted to its platforms. Meta, however, has denied the charges.
And it's game over for the Electronic Entertainment Expo, which is also known as E3. Organizers of the Los Angeles Gaming Expo E3 say that the event has been cancelled permanently. E3, once the world's largest gaming show, has traditionally been the place for game companies to tease their latest creations before they hit store shelves. The expo has struggled to stay popular after gaming giants launched their own events. Now, the US Federal Reserve surprised investors with a more aggressive forecast for monetary easing next year.
The US Central Bank held interest rates steady for a third meeting in a row at a 22-year high and flagged the end of its tightening cycle. Now, the tone too was dovish, with forecasts penciled in for 3 rate cuts next year. US Fed Chairman Jerome Powell made the announcement while addressing a news conference. Listen to this.
Our restrictive stance of monetary policy is putting downward pressure on economic activity and inflation. The committee decided at today's meeting to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate at 5.25% to 5.5% and to continue the process of significantly reducing our securities holdings. While we believe that our policy rate is likely at or near its peak for this tightening cycle, the economy has surprised forecasters in many ways since the pandemic, and ongoing progress toward our 2% inflation objective is not assured. We are prepared to tighten policy further if appropriate. We're committed to achieving a stance of monetary policy that is sufficiently restrictive to bring inflation sustainably down to 2% over time, and to keeping policy restrictive until we're confident that inflation is on a path to that objective.
US stocks surged to hit fresh highs for the year, and benchmark treasury yields slipped to their lowest level since August. The market rally came after the Fed delivered an early holiday present this year.
The dollar reversed its gains against major currencies, dropping after the central bank signaled rate cuts are coming. In the lead up to the policy decision, there were broad expectations for another hawkish stance that would have pit market bets for earlier rate cuts and the Fed's rhetoric for longer rates. But the central bank surprised everyone with a dovish tone. Traders embraced the change in the Fed's tone and dialed up their bets on rate cuts.
E-commerce brands leverage customer data to create highly personalized experiences.
Well, artificial intelligence, of course, it delves into your purchasing patterns, gaining profound insights, and its knowledge continues to evolve. Take a look at our next report.
In today's fast-paced digital world, personalized shopping experiences have become the cornerstone of modern marketing. According to McKinsey & Company, a staggering 71% of consumers now expect companies to deliver personalized interactions, and 76% express frustration when these expectations are not met. At its core, personalization often starts in your inbox, with emails tailored to your preferences, past purchases, and unique discount codes. These personalized tactics, driven by AI tools and data analytics, are small but mighty, potentially driving a 10% to 15% revenue lift for businesses. The success of personalization goes beyond immediate purchases. McKinsey reports that 78% of customers are more likely to repurchase and recommend a brand to friends and family when they receive personalized communications. Yet, there is a fine line between effective personalization and overstepping boundaries. Advanced as these tools are, they cannot account for every aspect of a person's life. Customer sentiment can sour from misfires such as sending a Mother's Day discount to someone grieving. Looking ahead, a 2023 Twilio segment report reveals that approximately 92% of companies are already using AI-driven personalization to drive growth. In this age of tailored communication, customers hold the power. As stores adapt to meet them where they are, they offer rewards and discounts to remain in their shopping rotation. The more customers share with a brand, the more tailored their experience becomes. So, while shopping future is undoubtedly personalized, the human element remains at its core. As we stride into this new era, companies and customers alike embark on a journey where technology and human intuition coexist, shaping a shopping experience that's uniquely tailored and deeply engaging. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
All right, let's get you a flavour of what's happening in the world of sport next. Newcastle United's return to the Champions League after more than 20 years ended in a heartbreak.
The Magpies lost 1-2 against AC Milan as both teams crashed out of Europe's premier competition in a thrilling climax to the proverbial group of death.
Well, Eddie